Inspector James Hudson did not need his 21 years of experience at Scotland Yard to see that something was amiss at the semi-detached London house. The large window next to the front door had been smashed, and pink curtains peeked out of the jagged hole like a rude tongue. Run-of-the-mill burglaries were not normally Hudson's department, but he had jumped at the chance to get out of the office. While the recent low crime rate in London, which he was to a large degree responsible for, was definitely a reason to celebrate. He had to admit he was a bit bored. He parked his beloved Bentley on the street and made his way up the drive. Shards of broken glass crunched under his shoes as he neared the front door. Kicking the excess glass of his soles on the edge of the doorstep, he adjusted his jacket, then rapped smartly on the door. The door was answered by a well-dressed and clearly harassed man in his early 40s. He ran his hand repeatedly through his graying hair in an unconscious, nervous gesture. "Inspector Hudson, Scotland Yard." The inspector introduced himself. "There was a burglary reported at this address. Are you the owner of the house?" "Yes, I am Andrew Harper." The man sighed, his hand still carving even channels through his hair. He stepped back to allow the inspector through the door. "Please come in." Hudson's first impression, as he entered the living room, was that the house had been pulled from its foundations and given a good shake. Paintings had been ripped from the walls, drawers had been opened and their contents scattered across the floor, and books and ornaments had been swept from the shelves. "Charlotte, my wife and I came home and found the place like this," Andrew said glumly, making a sweeping gesture with his arm towards the lounge. Hudson took a pen and notebook out of his front pocket. He flipped the book open in a well-practiced move. "Were you at work when the robbery took place?" Hudson asked, his pen poised. "Charlotte and I went to a restaurant for lunch this afternoon. It must have happened while we were out, as she was at home all morning," Andrew said. Hudson made a note. Andrew craned his neck slightly, trying to see what the inspector had written, but Hudson just moved his shoulders slightly, obscuring the man's view. "I am a partner at the architecture firm just down the road, so I have the luxury of being able to nip out and have lunch with my wife on the odd occasion," he said defensively, as if he suspected Hudson had written "fat cat" in the notebook and had underlined it twice. "What exactly was taken?" Hudson continued. "It looks like they only took one of my wife's necklaces," Andrew replied. "But it was antique and quite valuable. It was insured for over £10,000. We have already notified our insurance agency." He trailed off as the sound of approaching footsteps reached their ears. "Oh," he exclaimed, peering over Hudson's shoulder through the open door. "It looks like they have sent someone over already." When Hudson heard the quick, purposeful tap of high heels coming up the drive, he knew immediately who they belonged to. "Good morning, Elvira," he said, without turning round, as she crunched over the glass on the threshold. "Oh, James," she laughed, flicking her fiery red hair. "I should have known you can never surprise Scotland Yard's finest. You must be Andrew Harper." She turned towards the other man. "Elvira Elliot, Redfern's Insurance, Inc., she said by way of an introduction as they shook hands. "Pleased to meet you," Andrew said politely, looking a bit confused. "Do you two know each other?" he inquired. "Our paths have often crossed due to our work," Elvira said smoothly. She and Hudson had first met on a case a few years previously. The feisty, spontaneous young woman was the complete opposite of the serious, level-headed inspector from Scotland Yard. But they had proved to be a great team, and since then they had solved many strange and high-profile cases together. "I was just asking Mr. Harper here some preliminary questions." Hudson filled her in. "You were saying that it was just the jewellery that was taken?" Andrew nodded. At that moment, a pretty blonde woman walked slowly and dreamily into the lounge. She appeared not to notice the two newcomers or Andrew, and sat down slowly and awkwardly on the floor in the center of the lounge. In the midst of the chaos, she looked like the lone survivor of a hurricane. She reached over to a large wooden picture frame, which still held scraps of a ruined canvas, and started trying to pull the rip.
Um dieses Hörbuch kostenlos weiterzuhören, klicke auf den Link in der Beschreibung und du kannst es dank des 30-tägigen Audible-Probeabos vollständig anhören.